immunotherapy is probably the biggest advance that has occurred in cancer care in the last 50 years. Prior to immunotherapy coming onto the scene, we think about cancer care as surgery, radiation, chemotherapy. And all of those are treatments that, sort of have pushed the needle, but, in many cancers haven't really resulted in dramatic breakthroughs for decades. But immunotherapy is really now the fourth, sort of regimen and armamentarium that we have to fight cancer. And the beauty of it is it uses, for the most part, our own immune system to target cancers and to eliminate them from our body. So in many respects, it's much less toxic to the body because it actually uses your own immune system to fight the cancer. There's no question. I think the excitement around immunotherapy is palpable in all segments of cancer care. And, and it shows with the investments that are occurring nationally in immunotherapy. So programs like ours, are really sort of going all in on immunotherapy as the, sort of the key to unlocking cures in the future. But I've had patients who we were out of options, head and neck cancer patients, that's what I do, but others. Really were given very short life expectancies. I have one patient in particular that I remember who I had actually said my goodbyes to. And he went, and this was right at the start of the immunotherapy era. And I saw that he was on my schedule 6 months later. And I thought it was a mistake. And I asked my nurse partner, I said, is this for real? And she said, oh yeah, he called me. And he came back and he had no evidence of his cancer whatsoever. It had completely melted away on this, immune checkpoint inhibitor, which he was on. And that was the first palpable and real, visceral example to me of the promise of this therapy. Because, 6 months later, he came back and had a very minor problem that he wanted me to address that wasn't even related to his malignancy. So there are, and depends on the cancer, but there's about a 20% incidence of patients who have these dramatic responses to these immunotherapy agents where their tumor disappears. Now, there are, though, still those 80% of patients that, either have no response or have limited response to it. So that's where the field is really going now, is how can we get that 20% of really dramatic response up to a higher number. The one that is sort of the poster child, if you will, right now of success in immunotherapy is melanoma. So in melanoma, there has been up to 50% responses to immunotherapy agents. And what they've done with melanoma is they started out using what we call immune checkpoint inhibitor, then they did a combination of them. And with combinations, they're seeing as much as 50% long-term response rates, which is dramatic. So we'd love, to emulate what we've been able to accomplish with melanoma in other disease types. I mean, the beauty of the Wesley gift is it provides multiple facets to help our program in immunotherapy. It provides actually a cell therapy facility for us. So it allows us to create a facility where we are able to take a patient's cells out of their body, modify them in a laboratory to be able to identify a cancer, grow them up in the lab. So it's their own cells, genetically modified, and then reinfuse them back in the patient. Those are what are called CAR T cells, so that they can fight a cancer specifically. And so it provides for that cell therapy facility for us to be able to, build that facility, expand that facility, because we have that, so we can generate, therapies on site. Very few centers can do that. Only a handful in the United States are able to do that, and we're one of them. So it provides the facility. It provides us the ability to recruit a national leader by providing a chair, an endowed chair, endowed research funds for a preeminent researcher to come to Cleveland and lead these efforts. And it also provides research money to figure out what ways we can harness the immune system in the lab and then translate them to the patients as well. So it has a multi-pronged approach. At university hospitals, we currently have 61 clinical trials that employ an immunotherapy agent in them. So this is an area of immense research in the cancer field. And, it's across our city. So we collaborate, across the city with the Cleveland Clinic. They've also invested heavily with new recruits in this area. So it's building an environment in Cleveland, which is really going to help us differentiate from other parts of the United States. There are CAR T cells, which are the cells that I've described, where you can take T cells out of a patient, modify them genetically so that they can identify a target and infuse those back into a patient to fight a very specific surface marker on leukemia. So in acute lymphoblastic leukemia, or ALL, in children, there is now a CAR T product that's available and is putting children in complete remission with this particular cell therapy agent, which is a form of immunotherapy. In adults, there's a type of lymphoma as well that expresses a certain marker that is also being targeted with immunotherapy. And we have a trial which is looking at diffuse large B-cell lymphomas, where we infuse these cell therapy products. And as I said, we're one of only 5 sites in the United States that can do this trial by generating the product on site. There are other places where you can send it off and it takes about a month to get the processing done, but we can do it on site here in 8 days. And that makes a big difference because some patients can't wait, a month to get these treatments. So there are these cell therapy treatments available for adults with some lymphomas and children with leukemias. Soon there'll be a multiple myeloma similar trial. And the hope is that these cell therapies will be treatments that may be, in time, first-line treatments so people won't have to undergo bone marrow transplants to cure their leukemias and lymphomas. That's the hope in the future. Lung cancer as well, employing these immunotherapy techniques and targeted therapies, the survival rates of lung cancer have increased dramatically employing these methods as well. So when you look at, the 2% increase in year over year in survival in cancer, much of it was made up by lung cancer because of targeted therapies and immunotherapy. Particularly in our pediatric population, we have a very active group that is looking at immunotherapy as ways to target rare diseases, in children as well. And other, some of our trials that we have going on are also to decrease inflammation. So for instance, one of the cells that we're able to generate in the lab that the Wesleys are helping to expand is something that decreases inflammation. So our orthopedic doctors are using it for rheumatoid arthritis patients to decrease inflammation in their joints. And there were trials for cystic fibrosis patients to decrease inflammation in the lungs. So while you can ramp up the body's attack on cancers, you can also tamp down the immune responses to autoimmune diseases and to arthritis conditions, other conditions in the body that have too much inflammation. So that the ability to use the immune system to our benefit and to target it to specific disease states is what this gift is really all about. That this really is sort of the cutting edge and the new option that's available to cancer patients. I think there's a lot of confusion out there about what immunotherapy really is. And the simplest way to put it is that this is really a fourth option, if you will, in addition to chemo, radiation, and surgery for patients who are fighting cancer.